Hey, Courtney.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks
Oh,
for coming on. It's crazy how fast time actually goes by, you know? Like it's already the 29th of September.
I know. I know
And
we're nearing the end of the year.
yeah.
2026 will be here before we know it.
I mean, we booked this appointment like 2 months ago, give or take, and
Yeah,
it's already here. Like,
here.
wow. Like, wow. So, as I said pre-show, congratulations on your daughter.
Son.
Son, sorry,
No, it's
son,
okay.
my bad. My bad. Congratulations on your firstborn. So, how does it feel to be a mother?
Thank you. It's been really exciting. I've wanted to be a mom for a long time, so it's really a
Yeah.
dream come true that he's here. He's just so much fun to be around and like seeing him learn new skills and see his development. And he'll be 4 months on Friday, so it's just wild to see how much he's grown in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. Well, you're glowing. So,
Oh, thank
definitely,
you.
this has brought so
Thank
much joy into your life.
He has, and thankfully he's a good sleeper, so we're all pretty well rested over here.
And he's probably going to be like an award winning author one day. You know.
Well, I think so. He's a Gemini, so he's definitely going to like books. And I've got his big library just to the left of me. He's got a ton of books already.
Yeah, it's like what I always say, no matter what type of creative you are, it's in the DNA, it's in the
Yeah.
blood.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think so.
eventually it's something you're going to end up doing with your life. And sometimes you don't even realize it, right? Because maybe your parents weren't authors or musicians, but it's been in your bloodline. And then you realize one day, okay, this is my true calling, and then it's ancestral. That's how I felt for my life.
Yeah, yeah, I do think there is something sort of hereditary to it. My mom studied journalism when she was in school. Then my brother and I both studied journalism, and we've all sort of taken different career paths within, publishing or writing and PR. But it is interesting that there's something sort of genetic about it as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So before we get into it, brief introduction for all the listeners. Kourtney Jason is the president and co-founder of Brooklyn based. Am I correct? You're coming to us from New York?
Yes, we are.
Yes, award-winning publicity and digital marketing firm Pacific and Court. You have 15 years experience in the book industry as a publicist and as a writer. You are on a mission to redefine the PR landscape, and you are turning independent authors' dreams into a reality. Like you and I are alike, except I'm focused on the music side of this umbrella, right? But we both have like the same goal, whereas I want to turn independent musicians into award-winning musicians, Grammy award-winning musicians one day, even if it's not about the awards, but just so they can live their best life doing what they love most. you know that's what means most to me anyway.
Yeah, I
So it's a
love
pleasure
that.
to yeah, yeah. So it's a pleasure to have you on. To be completely honest with you and transparent, I have been eagerly waiting for this conversation to happen, and I'm going to tell you why. Um, so, I mean, the book industry has been a component of the podcast for, I would say, 6, 7 months, give or take now. I've been mainly focused on the music industry. And as I was progressing, a publicist from Canada reached out to me after listening to the show. And he's like, hey, would you love to interview authors? And I'm like, okay, that will be cool because I've come to the realization that there isn't much of a difference between the book industry and the music industry. It's like it's all under the same umbrella. The final product is just different. So I
Mhm.
was keen, and it's been quite a phenomenal journey for me interviewing authors who are signed to publishing houses or they're independent. But why I've been eagerly waiting for this conversation is because this is the first time I've had a publicist on the show who can answer questions that many authors are asking these days. Like it's always coming up on the show. So thank you for coming on and educating people as we progress, with the conversation today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your patience. I'm so happy to be able to, provide some insight on any questions that they've had in the whole sort of publishing process. I love how you compare it to music because it is like, the artistry of it, making sure that it's, an outlet for your creative
Yeah,
endeavor. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of alignment between that.
yeah, 100%. So before we jump into what you're currently doing right now and Pacific in Court and your career as a publicist, where did it all start for you? Like, what does your day one look like?
Oh, I mean, how far back do we want to go? I've
Yeah,
been writing since as long as I can remember. I worked for my high school newspaper. I worked for my college newspaper. After I graduated, I came to New York to work for magazines. Didn't, I loved newspapers, and I think, everyone should still support their local newspaper. It's so important to have, the local journalism. Um, but I did not like the daily deadlines that came with newspapers. I liked more long lead, long form journalism. So that's why I really gravitated towards magazines from the beginning of my career. So yeah, I moved to New York when I was 22 years old, fresh out of college. Moved here right in the middle of winter. So like January 7th, I think it was. So just coming from sunny California right to freezing cold New York City. But I loved it and worked for magazines for a few years. Unfortunately, one of them folded. So it was sort of my first awakening to like, oh, careers aren't, even if you have a stable job, like there's always things that could come up and change that, make things unstable, and things that are outside of your control can completely change the trajectory that you think you're on.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and that was my first realization of like, okay, this dream that I have that I've accomplished when I'm 22 years old, that makes you realize, well, now I need to have a new dream. What's my dream after this? Because I've accomplished this one. And it's, they don't really teach you that in college, that once you get your dream job, you're not going to stay in that for the next 40 years that you're working. Like you have to
yeah,
figure out what's next. And so I've had that lesson quite a few times in my career. And I've had multiple layoffs in my career. So, sort of the universe saying, yes, that's one direction, but we're also going to pivot and make sure that you're going down, this other sort of pathway that we think you should be on. So, some things have been in my control and some haven't.
it's life, right?
Exactly.
Right. You can't control it all.
No.
Yeah, no matter what you're doing. What you said about, still supporting the local newspaper, I agree with you. Um, like our local newspaper in my area, like I have issues with them at times. So I know the editor well, I know the head journalist well, but I feel at times there's just so much red tape when it comes to pushing out all the positive things going on in your community. Whereas I'm tired of always getting the paper each and every single Thursday, and the headline is something negative, you know? And it's most of what the paper is about. So, what is your thoughts on that? Like, why are local newspapers? I'm not sure, the local newspapers in your area, but I mean, if we look at mainstream media, for example, okay, fear sells more, negativity sells more. Like, what's your take on that from when you first got into journalism to how it is now?
Yeah, I think you're completely right. It's that fear sells more. So newspapers want to be sold. So they're going to focus on, you know, some of the harder things that are happening. Um, Sometimes I wish that there was like, where's the happy newspaper, right? That's just like giving us the feel good news. Some of it's a little bit dark in that like we're going to feel more separated when we're focusing on the bad things that are happening. And that's, part of a bigger problem in society, right? Versus like sharing and rejoicing in good things that are happening brings people together, and that brings community. And that's honestly what we need more of. So maybe newspapers need to, start creating a position for like upbeat reporters or like someone that's covering just like good news. And then that way we're
Yeah,
getting more of those stories and people feel just a little bit better about, what's going on in the world.
yeah. Like, I mean, front page, there should be like something positive, in
Yeah.
my opinion, But then you go like 5, 6 pages in, oh, there's something good that happened in the area. And then you go to the next page, oh no, there's something bad that happened again. So I always have, these disputes with them because I'm like, guys, what's up? There's so much positivity happening, like myself. Okay, so it's a small, it's not so small, but compared to other areas within South Africa, it's quite a small community. But there's so much potential. There's so much talent out there, from musicians to writers within the area, but they just got no direction at all. And then here I am providing that direction for free, right? But you never see it in the paper. Yeah, they featured, my team and I a few times, we're doing ABC, but it's always like 10, 15 pages, into the paper, and plus advertising is all over, because that's how they're getting paid, so there's more advertising than there is news. That's the reality of it. But, I offer them so much, but it's just never there, And then it's so disheartening for me to just look at all this talent within the community that have so much potential, but there's just no motivation. There's just no motivation. So it leaves me at a point where I'm like, okay, what's next? Now we're also in this digital era. Now you got all these online blogs, online magazines. But then I look at the lower communities in society who don't even have data or reliable internet connection or laptop or PC. They don't have access to all of these magazines and these articles that can offer them the advice and direction, or they don't have the resources to even tune in and listen to this podcast. So it leaves me there like, okay, what else can I do? But it is what it is. But while I have mentioned online magazines, what I have noticed happening, globally, is there's so much scams happening with these magazines. They're like reaching out to entrepreneurs and they're like, we'll feature you for whatever, and then you'll have to pay so much. And I'm like, but if you want to feature me for accomplishing what you say I have accomplished, like, why do I need to pay you? Like, go out and get advertisers.
Yeah.
So there's a little scamming that's happening as well, when it comes
There
to
is, and I think that's an important topic. Is there are companies out there that say, like, pay us, a certain amount of money and we promise you an article in Forbes. Like, that is absolutely a scam, and anyone should be aware of that, because those aren't real placements. Like, you can basically, it's going to become like advertising, it's marketing. Like, you can pay for coverage in that way, but it's an ad. It's not a earned media opportunity. And so I think there needs to be real clarification of what those differences are, so that authors, really know what they're paying for and what they're getting.
Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with paid publicity. That's the era we live in, even in the music industry, Bulk of what you're seeing these days online with mainstream artists is paid publicity, They got the money to back up the music, or they got the money to back up their book, whatever their final product is. And that's how they're getting, into these magazines. I mean, if you look at an artist like Beyonce or Taylor Swift, for example, or Drake, I mean, when they release a single, it's backed up, let's just say, by $400,000. Now, if you got $400,000 to throw on the table to market your track or to market your album or to market your book, I mean, boom, it's going to the top of the charts. Any song can go viral. Do you feel that's how the book industry as well, from a PR point of view? If I have to back up my book with $400,000, does that take me now to the top?
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's certain marketing companies out there that you can pay them to guarantee that you're a bestseller. And that's, really just meaning that you're an Amazon bestseller. Like, what's interesting about the New York Times bestsellers list is that it is an editorial feature. So yes, while they do follow and look at first week sales for books, they also have an asterisk that says their editors can pick which books go on that list. It's not a guarantee that if you have the most books sold that week that you're going to make that list. It's not a guarantee. They give themselves the editorial right to put what books they want on that list as well, which is super interesting. And I don't know that a lot of authors know that. And there's also so many different lists within the New York Times bestseller list. So based on, whether you're fiction or you're a cookbook, you're going to be on, different lists, and those are going to have different, measurements of what they consider a bestseller. But yeah, there's marketing companies that you can pay to make sure that you get that bestseller tag on Amazon. And the more money you have it's an investment, right? To put into your book to make sure that people can find it. We primarily work with independent authors because we want to make sure that we're offering them the services that they're not going to get from the big five. Like if they're with an independent publisher, we still want to make sure that they're getting that attention and getting pitched to the media because their stories are just as important. They just aren't necessarily going to have the same budget as, a book from the big five.
Definitely. They get left behind.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times when an author comes on and they say, okay, they signed to a publishing house, and I'm like, how's it going there? How's the red tape? Because I'm sure arguments can happen because it's bottom line for these guys. We want the book to sell. But bulk of the time, they're saying that the big publishers are like, starting to become more humble and getting down to their level where we're working with the author now because of the independent threat, because as an author, I want to have the final say. Yes, I appreciate the advice that you are giving me on the cover, for example, or on the editing side, whatever it can be, but I still want to have control over my work, and bulk of them who are with the publishers at the moment, they don't seem unhappy to me, And then I speak to independent publishers, and they just love having full control of their work. It's work for hire when it comes to the editors. They self-publishing the books themselves. So you get the ones that love being independent and ones who love being with publishers. But there was one fascinating part that, surprised me. Like an author can release one book independently, and then he can release another book via a publisher. And I never know you could do that.
Yeah, I think that's what's really been a great change within the industry is that there are so many different ways to publish a book now. So you really can find the path that's right for you, whether that is, independently publishing yourself or finding a publisher that is, the right collaboration and partnership for you. There's no one way to do it. There's no right way to do it. It's what's right for you and what makes sense, like you said, where you feel like you have, the editorial and creative collaboration or the editorial and creative control. So it's really, what the author wants, and they can find that process that's right for them.
Yeah, and works for them. So Kourtney, Pacific and Court, I'm intrigued. When did it start? And how did the name come about?
Yeah, we started in 2021. So we initially started conversations in 2020 and creating the business plan, and we were ready to launch January 2021. A funny thing about the name, we're based in Brooklyn, so we knew where our office space would be. So to pick the name, we honestly looked at a map and found an intersection of like what sounds like a good, sort of company name. I, thought about having my name tied to it, but I also was like, it's not about me, it's about the author, so we don't need to have my name in the company. And then we had originally picked the name Pacific and Bond, which is an intersection like not too far from where our office space is located. We did all the paperwork, got it registered with the government. It got rejected because of the word bond. They would only let us use that word if we were a financial company, and we're not a financial company, so we were not allowed to use the word bond. So we had to go back to the map, literally, and pick another intersection. And, then we thought Pacific and Court, we wanted, a singular, a singular word, single syllable. So yeah, so that's how, it's Court with a C versus my name, Kourtney with a K, but our offices are on Court Street in Brooklyn. So yeah, so it all sort of worked out the way it was supposed to.
I was not expecting that answer.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of a
You were expecting
backstory.
an answer.
Who knew? I didn't know
Oh,
that,
wow.
yes,
Wow,
it
like,
said that certain words
yeah.
were only for financial companies. The things that you learn as you're, setting up a business.
Yeah. But I mean, intersection,
Yeah.
and getting the name from that, like, I really wasn't expecting that answer. Well, I mean, it's definitely unique, instead of like the norm out there that has like some creative jargon linked to it,
Yeah.
makes it unique. And how has the journey been, since you launched?
It's been more amazing than I ever could have imagined growing up, or, since I started my career in PR. My mom would ask me, like, would I ever have my own agency one day? And I said, no, absolutely not. That just seems like too much work. I wouldn't know what I'm doing. But when the sort of opportunity to launch my company came to me, it was a no-brainer and I couldn't say no. And at that point, I had been through 3 layoffs in my career that I'm like, why do I keep letting my career like be up to someone else's, discretion or their say of whether I have a job or not. I've got laid off from magazines. I got laid off from, a publishing house. And then at that point, I had felt like books were a little unstable. So I had worked with so many cookbooks and chefs that I went to a hospitality agency and worked with restaurants and chefs. And that was in 2019. And I said to myself, well, restaurants aren't going anywhere. And little did I know what 2020 had in store for us, that all
Yeah.
restaurants would shut down. So that was my last layoff, and hopefully we're through with those now. But I honestly feel like the most job security that I've ever had. I feel the most fulfilled in any position that I've had. And it's just like such a thrill to like be able to have more of a say in my career and decide which authors we're working with, which ones seem like the right fit for us. Like, people come to us, I want to make sure they're the right fit for us, but I want to make sure we're the right fit for them too, that our goals are aligned, that we really truly can help them with their book launch.
Yeah, yeah. You have to make sure that your clients is the right fit for your business.
Yes.
You know, it's just not about getting, paid. It's about, do you fit well with us?
Yeah.
Are we aligned? It's so critically important, and that's a healthy way, in my opinion, to grow any business whatsoever. So, for the listeners, can you define what is the role of a publicist?
Yes. So to define what we do, it's really making sure that at the end of the day, we're getting you media coverage. So it's positioning you in a way that the media would be interested in telling your story. Whether it's your story or, a lot of our authors, we primarily work with nonfiction. So a lot of our authors are experts. It's, positioning them as experts for the media to consult for different articles and input, for different features, different news stories, trends, all of that. So it's getting that placement for the book or the author in any type of media outlet, traditional or new media. So podcasts, blogs, social media, but still the traditional media of newspapers, magazines, TV, and radio.
And podcasts.
And well, podcasts are like the new media. It's a new,
The new media,
yeah.
the future. That's what I call it, the future.
That
You
and
know,
Substack newsletters, those are the main 2 focuses of of many of our campaigns now.
yeah, yeah. You know, um, this is a no filter show. So I am going to be completely honest, with you being a publicist on what authors, have told me and their concerns. I've come across authors who have been the publicist for some time, and then they're like, because I love to keep the relationship going, no matter who you are. When you come on the show, like, I love to keep the relationship going. And 1 month later, an author will like send me a message and be like, I've left my publicist. And sometimes I'm like, I think that's a good decision. I think you've made a good decision when I hear the reasoning behind why they have left their publicist. And I'm going to explain to you or tell you, what is the reasoning. So they feel, and, this is several authors, okay? They feel I'm paying the publicist X amount of dollars each and every single month, right? And when I look at my book sales, I haven't even sold 3 books, and that's the main concern. So now the publicist is charging, let's just say, for example, $400. I've gotten you on this interview, on this podcast, I've featured you on this magazine, here's the invoice, and this is what you have to pay. The author now looks at the book sales and he's like, or she, I haven't sold any books. All this publicity and I haven't sold any books. And that's their main concern right now. So they leave the publicist because now they feel, okay, now it's a waste of money, but then they don't know what to do afterwards. They're not familiar with the digital space, or all the duties that the publicist was supposed to be responsible for. And then I will be like, okay, but did you bring this up with the publicist? Like, did you have like this one-on-one conversation with them about your concerns? And they're like, yeah, we did. And okay, what was the response? The publicist was like, selling your books is not my responsibility. So I'm like, what? So what's your take on that?
I completely agree. I say that in our very first call. I ask our, if it's a new client, a potential new client for us, I say, what are your goals? Is it to sell books? Is it for you to become known as an author? Is it to raise awareness to, whatever message you're delivering to a particular cause or topic? Or is it, attracting new clients to your business? Or is it some combination of all of the above? That really helps me understand just how realistic they are about what their true goals are. Are they using the book as a business card? Are they using it as credibility to further establish their brand? Do they have more books in them that they plan to write, so they just want to get their name out there as an author? If their goal is to sell books and that's their only goal, then I'll say PR is not what they should be doing. That's not where they should be putting their money. If they really want to see the bottom line of sales increase, they need to focus on advertising and, whether that's Amazon advertising or social media advertising. Especially with Amazon, you can see exactly where that money's going and where it's converting to sales and really target, the direct audience for your book. There's something like 50, 80 million books on Amazon. So you have to do something to get people to find your book. They're not just going to find it on their own. With PR, it's about awareness. So I always make sure to tell authors, I can't guarantee sales. I don't guarantee anything, but I cannot guarantee sales. I cannot guarantee how a placement will increase your sales. Like, there's just no way to do that. If I could, I'd be a magician and, that'd be magic, but there's no way to do that. So it's, making sure that they understand that, yes, media placements help with their awareness. It helps get them in front of a potential audience to buy their books, but I can't control what the consumer is going to do. But at least they've gotten in front of them and, I'm finding them the right audience that's interested in this topic. And then it's up to that consumer to, take that next step. And there's also a marketing stat that says, like, a consumer has to see something 7 times before they'll buy it. So, they need to see you. Essentially, that means they need to see you in 7 different media placements to want to buy your book, whether that's, a combination of podcast interviews, articles, and then seeing, your book advertised on Facebook or Instagram. All of that helps them, get to that purchase button.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. This, now, gives like a lot of clarity to me and to authors, who are concerned about the publicists, that they are with at the moment. What you mentioned about control. I can't control the sale of your books, I can't control how many people are going to tune into the podcast. I can't. I can't I can get 100 people possibly through marketing, to listen to the podcast, but there's no guarantee that, people are still going to head over to your website and purchase your book, which leads me to one of the questions I wanted to ask you today, which is how critically important brand visibility is in 2025 onwards and building a strong brand for yourself. The end consumer, whether it be book or whether it be music, right, is not just going to purchase your book because it's a great book, or they're not just going to listen to your music on Spotify. That could be a great song, but in order keeping in mind now, let me just say that, no artist or independent artist, can earn a living just off streams on Spotify. Hence why brand visibility and a strong brand is so important. But for them to listen to your song, to need them to attend one of your concerts or, your book signings or buy your merchandising. So when it comes to like a strong brand visibility, how do you go about that?
A lot of it comes to cohesiveness. So making sure, with an author, are your handles going to be the same across the different platforms so that people can find you easily on whichever platform they're using? Are your images, the brand sort of messaging, are the colors, are the fonts, is all of that cohesive so that people can recognize it, right? Like we look at the most, Apple, we all know what their logo is. Like there's things that just like become second nature and ingrained in you when it's really cohesive or clear or simple. And so that's, that can attract your audience and make them, more aware, recognizable. With brand awareness, I mean, it's the biggest strength that an author can have is having their audience built into whatever they're doing already. So, and that's something that publishers are looking for at any size, whether you're going to an independent publisher or one of the big 5 publishers, they're going to look at how many people are already following you across all of your platforms. So having that built-in audience is extremely important and makes you, a better author that they're going to be more interested in signing because they know, okay, this person has a following that is already interested in what they're offering, the services they're providing, whatever, and that's whatever you're providing, you can use that to get them to buy what you're selling, There's also like a marketing stat that like 80% of your content on social media should be service. Like you should be giving away, 80% of your content should be something that people can use. And then the other 20% is what you can, how much you should be selling yourself or selling your products or courses or books or whatever it is. So you don't want to overwhelm people with buy this, buy this, buy this, because you're going to turn them away.
Yeah, yeah. There's that similarity again, between the book industry and the music industry. It's if a record label like Universal Music, for example, wants to sign you today, they're looking at your social media following. And if you have a great following, they're going to sign you. You are still going to be doing all the hard work. And I guess it's the same that goes for an author. I mean, you can have a publicist, you can have a publisher, you can have a manager, you can have a whole team, a team of 50, but there's still work required from you to promote your material, to the world. So yeah, like I always love to compare brand building in this triangle because it's your business brand. If you're an independent author, that's your business. It's your product and it's your personal brand. And you have to market all 3 differently.
Yeah, and it's so important to show that personal side too. You can't just be all business all the time because people are going to feel that sort of inauthenticity or they'll feel a distance of like, well, they're showing some stuff, but I'm not getting to know them. Like there is a vulnerability on social media that you still need to give to like have your audience engage and care for you that much more and have, sort of feel like that relationship is stronger.
Yeah, there's really understanding, the market, your target audience. We now live in a world which is driven by so much emotion. Okay, people are driven more emotionally when it comes to pragmatic, logical thinking. And you need to tap into that emotion. And once you tap into that emotion, you've won, and the power of community, build your community. Like I tell a lot of authors, that come onto the show, like which audience are you targeting? I don't know. You need to find your specific audience. My audience is not going to be your audience. Your audience is not going to be the next guy's audience. 7 billion people in the world. You need to find your audience.
Yeah.
And you will find your people that's going to relate to your work, to your book. Find them, keep them, communicate with them, engage with them, appreciate them, show them love. And each time you release a book, they're going to be there to support you.
Exactly. And I think that's a question that I always ask in our sort of initial calls too, is like, describe your target audience. And I've said before, like, for me, it's a red flag from an author if they say their audience is everyone, because it's not. Like, you can't, if your audience is everyone, then your audience is no one. And that's a problem if you don't
Yeah.
know who they are, because you can't be selling something to everyone. You have to really know like their demographics, their interests, the age group, really find these specifics, because that will help you, be able to target and really cater your message to who they are and what they're looking for. It's so important.
Yeah. I love that. If your audience is everyone, your audience is no one. That's great.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah. I'm going to use like a simple example. You are not exactly going to go on to a podcast where it's all about cars, right?
Right.
You know, I mean, doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. Okay, thank you for sharing that. To conclude on that question, I mean, brand visibility, self awareness is so important. One of the exercises I have with independent musicians, before we jump in the studio, is I give them this 2-page questionnaire just on self awareness. Because if you don't know who you are, how do you expect your listeners, your audience to know who you are?
Mm-hmm.
Many people don't know who they are yet. So let's talk about pre-launch to post-launch. How are you doing it differently to all the other publicists, PR companies out there?
That's a good
What's your
question. I don't know that we're necessarily doing it differently, but I will say the way that I approach our client relationships is what sets us apart. I care so much about the author's story. I care so much about getting their story right. Because of my journalism background, I use a lot of storytelling in the way that I craft my press releases and pitch angles. And I think that's what sort of stands apart when I'm pitching the media, is because I'm telling the story. I'm providing, I'm giving the journalist maybe I'm approaching, here's a problem that's, happening in society or, within the specific field. And here's an expert with ideas or solutions that they can give to your audience to help resolve this problem, and things that they can take, and put into action in their own life. So I think that's our sort of approach to campaigns that might be a little different. But the way that we approach a campaign, or like the sort of template of a PR campaign, is still pretty traditional to what you would get, in-house at a publishing company, or with other agencies. We're starting with an onboarding questionnaire similar to what you're doing. So we want to make sure that the author, has some ideas of where they want to be placed, what are their goals for media placements, that way I know what we're working towards. I'll have my own ideas, but I want to know, what their wish list is. And then asking them, what are some questions that you would want to be asked in an interview? All of that helps me craft the messaging and how to pitch stories to the media. From there, I do the press materials. So that first week of the campaign is crafting their press materials, the messaging. That goes to the author for review. Once that's all finalized, then we start the proactive outreach. So pitching them for podcasts, radio hits, and features, and local news and national news, and, figuring out, what are the different stories, that different pitch angles that we can use throughout the campaign. Most of our campaigns are 3 to 6 months long. And we typically start, for the 3-month campaigns, we're starting, 6 to 8 weeks before the books on sale, with a continuation of 6 to 8 weeks after. That way we're able to sort of see the momentum through. It gives us that that short lead time to get interest and buzz going ahead of the launch, get some interviews booked, get some coverage placed, and then we're able to continue that, post publication date as well, and be able to follow up, make sure that people have gotten the books, that the reviews are coming out. Something that I think a lot of people don't think about with book PR is that it can be very slow. It's like a 6-step process to get a book review, because you have to pitch the book, you have to get the interest from the journalist to want to receive the book, you have to mail the book, you have to let them receive the book, have time to read the book, then you follow up, and then you might get coverage. So it's really like a 6-step process to see that all the way through. It's not just, there's a product involved, and people will want to read the book or see the book. And so sometimes it needs a little more time. It's not just overnight. But with other types of media, you can get, get a couple things going a little faster. There's, you can book podcasts a little bit faster, but even then, some are still booking 6 months to a year. I have authors that I'm booking for podcasts in January 2026 right now. So it just completely varies. Podcasts all have different seasons. They have different recording timelines. So all of that is, it's not just one time frame for every single podcast. It's all different. So that at least, gives us different, when we're using different pitch angles, and we're able to get, different types of media going at the same time for an author so that they feel like there's, more momentum.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that answer.
That was a lot of info.
Yeah, that was a lot of info. That's why I said, I said at the start I was eagerly awaiting this conversation, because now, besides the listeners, myself as well, we're learning so much, about what goes on behind the scenes. Like, how you were explaining that process. That's a lengthy process. So the author really needs to be patient.
They
But,
do.
you like, also, you can continue.
The patience is so important, because it's not even the way I can't guarantee sales. I also can't guarantee that a journalist is going to write back to me. I can send them as many emails. I don't want to ever bother anyone or like overwhelm them or feel like I'm, harassing them via email. But, it's knowing, I'm always telling our authors too, like, I will pitch the people that we're supposed to pitch. I cannot guarantee that they're going to write back immediately, but I can tell you they are going to hold on to my pitch email, because I know they're well written. I know they're good stories. They might not write back for 6 months to a year, but they will hold on to my pitch. And when they're ready to reach out, they will. And that might be 6 months to a year after we've ended your campaign. But it'll be really exciting when I can reach back out to you and say, hey, we finally got this 6 months later.
Yeah. Wow. But, it's good that you're there with them every step of the way, and, you're transparent and you're explaining it to them. This is how it works from the word go, instead of just promising them ABC, not communicating with them on a daily basis, not having those onboarding questionnaires, let me label it that. And then they just feel completely lost, and they don't understand, what actually goes into it. But now you have shared that clarity with authors who are uncertain about, the publicist they're with at the moment, or should I get a publicist? This gives them now that broader understanding of how this all really works. It's not like, am I going to sign up for Kourtney today and tomorrow, my book is going to be a bestseller. It's a process.
It is a process. And we work with so many first-time or debut authors. So, I mean, PR is honestly the most fun part of the process, right? You've written the book. You've done the hardest part. Now you just get to talk about it. You get to share all this hard work that you did with people that want to find it, with people that want to buy your book, with people that want this information that you have that you're sharing. So working with first-time authors, like, I want to make sure I'm guiding them through this process. I want them to feel supported. I want them to, understand what a PR campaign takes. It is still hard work. You still need to be available. You still need to write things. You still, just because you wrote the book, the writing isn't over. We're always pitching, guest articles, op-eds, different, you're doing written Q&As for outlets. So there's still writing that comes with the PR process, but it's also fun that you get to talk to people about it. You get to engage, you get to tell people about it. And it's such a celebration. So I always want authors to feel supported in that, but be excited, because now you're getting to share, writing is such a solitary process, right? So here's something, now you get to share it with people and get their reaction too. So I'm always wanting authors to feel supported and feel excited, because it is exciting.
Yeah, you make them feel like they are part of the family.
Yeah,
you are part of Pacific and Quad, and you're such a happy, bubbly person. Who wouldn't want to work with you?
Thank you so much. I think that comes across.
Yeah, I mean, wow, I'm amazed, and keep the good work with what you're doing. For authors and guiding them, with this process. After me meeting so many frustrated ones, this shows a lot of clarity on it. So there's definitely pitfalls along the way. You also guide them with that. how to avoid those pitfalls along the way. What are like the common pitfalls that you find in the industry at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's hard for authors to receive a bad review. Whether that's even just a consumer review on Amazon or Goodreads, or on Instagram. It can feel harder. It can feel, sort of like a blow to the ego. But that's just one person's opinion. If you read a bad review, then I always want them to go read a good review, because that's just one person's review, and there's many more people that are more receptive to your work, or more, feeling more positive towards it, right? So for every negative review, there's always a bunch more positive. So ignore that negative one and read the good stuff. And then there's just understanding that the big legacy media just isn't as impactful. I can still get authors in the New York Times, but that doesn't mean they're going to see a bump to their sales. They might not. And that's understanding that, because back to that, if your audience is everyone, your audience is no one. How many people are reading the New York Times? Your audience is only going to be a really small part of that big pool of millions of readers. So you might benefit more doing a very niche podcast on your topic that has a much more engaged audience on that specific topic. You might, have a better ratio of listeners that then go buy your book. So it's understanding that, yes, everyone wants that big New York Times hit to say, hey, I've been in the New York Times, but that doesn't guarantee the sales again. So it's understanding that, there's different types of media and they're all important. So really having the variety of podcasts, reaching out to those Substack newsletters that are, on your topic. There's media for every sort of topic out there. So it's making sure that you're finding the ones that, align with where your audience is.
Yeah. One concern that came up recently as well is for an author to keep their political views to themselves and not make it public. Would you agree?
It varies. We don't do much within the political world. And it's something that I don't, I obviously am an engaged citizen in my personal life, but I definitely make sure to separate it from my professional life. So yeah, it just depends. I mean, how much does it relate to your key message? I think understanding if there's a direct correlation to the topic or if there's overlap, then go for it. But if you're writing a dessert cookbook, but someone's asking you about politics, there's no reason, they could be they're very different things.
Yeah, that's actually the example I wanted to use, I'm writing a nonfiction, okay, not nonfiction, I'm writing a fiction book, about the galaxy or something, aliens. But then I'm also sharing my political views online. That could damage my brand.
I think it depends on what, it depends on how your audience feels. If you feel like your audience is, of a politically engaged group, then I don't think it's going to hurt you. But say if your audience is trying to find, a sort of escape from it, then they might not want that sort of overlap.
Yeah. No, it's good to just ask those questions to a professional, to get their opinion on it. It becomes hard at times, I know, for a lot of people out there, especially when you're in the limelight all the time, just to keep your personal views to yourself. With this show, for example, it's so diverse. Last time I had an author who focuses on children's books, and the work she's doing is phenomenal when it comes to educating children so they can grow in a healthy manner, both physically, psychologically, and spiritually. Now, in the world itself, there's this whole thing going on with Palestine and Israel and so on. But for me personally, when it comes to the show, when it comes to my personal brand and what I'm building, I just eliminate that because that's just good for me and for the growth of the podcast and being diverse and being open-minded. And I just feel there's just so much, positivity and growth and just going it, that way for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I can have personal opinions. Sure, I'm human. Ask me something, I'll share my opinion on it. But I'm unbiased. Not biased. I can sit in a room in a conversation with people that have all different types of views. But I'll still be friends with each and every single one of you when we all leave the room. If you guys want to kill each other, that's on you.
Well, that's such a good skill to have. One of our clients, she's a friendship expert, and she really preaches that like we need to find what we have in common rather than what separates us and what our differences are. Like it's so much more important to find that connection instead of, what's tearing us apart.
And it's such a simple thing to do, but we just get so caught up, like what I mentioned, being emotionally driven in 2025. So, Pacific and Court, do you just focus in the US or are you global?
We are primarily North America. I mean, we work with, mostly stateside based authors. We've had a handful of Canadian authors. And then we've worked with some authors that have been in the UK. But primarily, yeah, English speaking countries, if you will. Yeah.
So, an author that's in South Africa, for example, comes my way and is like, do you know any publicist that I can reach out to assist me with my work? Like, would you take on those authors as long as,
we're focused. I'm open to authors wherever they are. If their focus is like, media in the US, if they're, as long as their book is published here, we focus on media within the US and Canada in terms of like media placements.
Yeah. I mean, like, the listeners on this show, it's scattered,
Yeah.
It's like US is at the top, but it's like scattered, there's a bit of Africa here and there, Europe here and there, So when it comes to the guests on the show, the individual on the show that actually work on the business side of things, like I always bring that up. What if someone in Spain, for example, who's writing an English book, using that as an example because you focus on English material, who's listening to the show and is like, okay, let me try reach out to Pacific and Court, maybe they can assist me. So, and why I just to ask that question.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. So, as a conclusion, what's your final words to independent authors globally? Who are right now sitting at home wondering what's the next for me and my life?
Yeah, great question. I think my sort of final message is to plan ahead. So make sure if you are wanting to put a focus on PR and marketing, that you are thinking ahead of it, before your book comes out. Like I said, we ideally want to work on a book 6 to 8 weeks before it's on sale. So, even calculating back from that, you're going to want to be talking to, PR and marketing agencies, probably 3 to 4 months at the latest, before your book comes out. You're going to want to interview a couple different agencies, find the team that feels like the best fit for you. And that you feel like the best that, they feel like the best fit for you. You feel like the best fit for them. And then, yeah, I just really hope everyone has a successful launch. I always want everyone to feel proud of when their book comes out into the world and feeling supported with the team. So yeah, I just wish that for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. It is a proud moment. Each time, for me, it's like, you release a book and you got that feeling like, wow, I'm so proud of myself. Then you release the next book or the next song and you got that same feeling. For me, it just tells me that, look, I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. That's why each time still feels like the first. I guess, from all the information I've gathered and from personal experience as well, it's always exciting when you're releasing that song or an author's releasing that book, but they just give up too soon.
Yeah,
You know,
I
the
feel that way
guilty.
anytime I get a media hit for an author. It's so exciting and it's thrilling and it's like, we did it. That's what we were working towards. So I always feel
Yeah,
that
yeah.
same excitement.
Yeah, you know, you shared so much positivity on the show that I hope can inspire authors, independent authors, you know, who are just getting themselves going, you know, to just be patient with their journey, trust the process. You know, that first book you release is not going to bring you riches. And if riches is what you are expecting, then you are doing it for the wrong reasons. You know, it's all about passion. And if your heart is truly in the right place, you know, you will make it day by day. So
Yeah.
don't let the financial aspect of it and all those things, you know, stop you from living, you know, your best life. It'll work out for you. And as you mentioned, you know, find the right team, find the right
Yes.
network, you
Yes.
know, listen to the correct shows, consume the correct material, you know,
Yes.
the simplest things we could do in life. I just got one more question, Courtney, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sorry,
What's your take?
my baby just came inside too.
Yeah, yeah. The publicists. Like, is there any concerns with authors at the moment?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What's your take on artificial intelligence at the moment? Is there any concern with the authors that you are currently working with? Because now artificial intelligence, you know, get rich quick scam. People can do a book in 5 minutes and they're uploading it onto Amazon, you know, or
Yeah. Yeah,
financial
there's
gains.
definitely concern. We're all trying to navigate. Oh, sorry, you'll see my baby
I
back.
can see it.
There's certainly, concerns with AI across all fields. I think it's great in the industry for administrative tasks, anything that, you can shorten and, increase your productivity. But there are, obviously the creative concerns. I think a lot of publishers are now noting on books, that these books were created without any use of AI. And I think if you're a consumer that cares about that, that's something that you can look out for to make sure that you're supporting, the writers and creatives themselves and not anything that's, been created from AI. But in the industry, I think we're all trying to figure out how to adapt with it instead of getting left behind. Publishing can be, a bit slow to change sometimes. One of my colleagues is, a leader in AI within publishing. And he says, it's not AI that's going to take your job, but it's someone using AI that's going to take your
Yeah,
job. So
yeah,
we all just have to sort of have a collaborative and industry-wide agreement of, ethical uses for it, but also acknowledge we can't have it replacing, the creativity, because then what sort of, then there's just not going to be any creativity left or any, anything that's unique and original.
yeah, yeah. That's a well said answer. Thank you so much for your answer. I agree with all that you just said there. So it's
Yeah,
all about
thank
using
you.
it responsibly. No one wants to get left behind, but use it responsibly.
Yes,
You know, simple as for
absolutely.
any listener to understand. Kourtney, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to come onto the show. This has been really insightful.
Thank you so much for
Really,
having me, Kino. I've enjoyed this so much.
yeah.